Hello, my name's Eden Longson, and I should be writing some music, but instead of doing that, I'm going to talk on the internet about some music that I like. I am a big Avenged Sevenfold fan. I mean, from the ages of, I don't know, maybe 14 to like 20, they were my favourite band. They definitely shaped the way that I think about music and do music. I mean, the Rev, who was their drummer, Jimmy Sullivan, he was like the guy to me. He was my drumming god. Like, if I had to assemble a pantheon of drummers, he was there, if not like on top, right? Love that guy. It genuinely hurt me when he passed away. I remember like they released the next album, Nightmare, with Mike Portnoy on kit, and there's a song on there that I just like can't listen to because it's got his voice on it. Fiction. Like, I literally can't listen to Fiction because he's still got his voice on it, so they used his vocals from the demo, and yeah, it hurts. Like, I've only listened to it like twice, and it just makes me cry. So yeah, when I say I'm invested in Avenged Sevenfold, that's definitely true. However, I have to say I kind of fell off for Hail to the King. I thought Hail to the King was like a really solid album, but it didn't grab me the same way as it did before. I really didn't like a lot of the production elements, particularly for drums. I felt like the hi-hat sound on that album for some reason was just shocking. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was Aaron LJ, the cymbals he was using or something. I don't know. I never got to see Avenged Sevenfold live with the Rev, but I did see them with Aaron LJ, and I thought he was great. I thought he was awesome, but he wasn't the Rev. Then they recorded The Stage in 2016, which that album I thought was good, although I can't pull it to mind. Like, it's one of those albums that like I listened to and I was like, yeah, fine. But like, when I think about how many times I've listened to Waking the Fallen, City of Evil, and the self-titled album, in fact, I think I've probably listened to Sound of the Seventh Trumpet like quite a lot more times. I love the self-titled album, but there was two documentaries. One was called like All Excess or something like that, and then one was like the making of the self-titled album. Used to watch them religiously. Loved those. And so I just want to talk a bit about, or maybe give like a review, I guess, of their new album, Life is But a Dream. Ever since The Stage, Avenged Sevenfold, or A7X as they sometimes like to be known as, they have been working with Brooks Wackerman, who is a fantastic drummer, and like, if there was anyone I could think to emulate the Rev style, it would be Brooks Wackerman. He's the drummer for Tenacious D, and he's brilliant at that. He's an incredible, insanely good drummer, like the Rev was. They made The Stage, and like I said, kind of, it was fine. I thought like some of it was really good, but nothing really stuck with me. Whereas like their new album, Life is But a Dream, I think there's some really interesting stuff on here. I think that, okay, so let me walk through it. So the opening track, Game Over, starts with some acoustic guitar and some orchestration, and then it kicks in with like a pretty heavy beat. I thought this song was like fine. I definitely remember thinking to myself, I've heard better album openers from A7X. Like, I actually think like Nightmare is like a better opener, and then The Rapture as well. I think there just are. I mean, Critical Acclaim is just such a badass way to start an album. Like, I love that tune, and like just kicking straight off with it was just incredible. This one felt a bit like it was Avenged Sevenfold trying to say, you can't guess what we're doing. You know what I mean? It felt like they were sort of being kind of overtly obtuse with their style. It felt like they started with this acoustic guitar stuff, and it was like, okay, this is going to be different and new, and then it went into something that sounded very A7X, and it was like, okay, what are you trying to say here? So that song kind of came and went, but then I really liked Mattel, or Mattel, they're the guys who make Barbie, right? Which is kind of interesting because there's the Barbie movie coming out, and I thought this song was bonkers. I thought it was great. Like, there's some really, really cool stuff in this song. Mattel? It could be Mattel, could be Mattel. Honestly don't know, but I thought that track was ace. It starts off really heavy, and it has this sliding down kind of like riff to it, and that was really cool, and that comes back later, which I thought was kind of cool as well, back in a different track. I felt like a lot of the electronics were a bit unnecessary. I felt like I kind of just wanted to hear Brooks and like Zach and Johnny just like play this, like the verse. I kind of felt like I didn't need it to be electronic. I don't know what that sound did, if anything. I guess maybe they're playing on the fakeness of Mattel, I don't know. But then the effect on M Shadows' voice at the end of the verse I thought was really, really cool. I thought that was really, really effective. And then there's this massive sound when they come in for the I guess, chorus, or I guess it's like a pre-chorus. It's annoying though because it happens on the downbeat as it starts, and it doesn't happen again until the next pre-chorus, and you'll be like, oh, that sound was really cool, bring it back. And then we get to the chorus, which is like this really mature, cool sounding harmonic space. Like the harmonic language they're using is like really, really interesting, really, really cool, and just like beautiful. Like it was a really beautiful song. It was really heavy, but then also took us to a really beautiful place, which I think is kind of a theme in this album going forward. I do like the line, I know this may sound crazy, but I've smelt the plastic daisies. There's something about that line that kind of just works for me. I'm not entirely sure what it is. I just think it's a cool line. I think there's something somewhat tongue-in-cheek about it, but then also does speak to what the song's about. But yeah, it worked for me. So after the second chorus, there's Elated, which is just bonkers. I bet it would be amazing to hear live, for sure. And then the ending is epic. It's like this really epic ending using some of that harmonic language that I mentioned before, really heavy. It just kind of fades out though. I feel like this song is maybe like a bit longer than I would want it to be. How long is the song? It's 5 minutes and 30 seconds. This felt like a 4.5 minute track to me, pushing 5. I just felt like you could trim a bit off the end and it would be an amazing song. So now comes the lead single, Nobody, which I think they were hoping to maybe go for like, you know, Hail to the King, Nightmare, Afterlife, just like Beast and the Harlot, you know, like the big, heavy, but also palatable song off the album. And it has that similar falling motif from Metal, which I thought was really cool. It was like, is this a theme of the album? Like, this sliding, this falling, just like that kind of thing. I don't know. I just thought that was like a really cool motif to bring back, especially in like the next song. It does. I know The Stage is a concept album, I think, and I don't think this one is, but it did kind of feel like there was connections through each of the songs, which I thought was really cool. I thought there was thematic and some motivic connections to the songs. Genre-wise, this album's all over the place. I don't know what genre this album is. It's progressive something. There's metal moments, there's funk moments, there's like electronic moments, there's gospel moments, there's orchestral moments. I don't know. Like, I just felt like for each of their other albums, not counting The Stage, I guess, because I don't really listen to that one, but like, they all had a sound, and whereas I feel like this one is a slight Frankenstein's monster. I say a slight Frankenstein's monster because I don't dislike it, I just think it's just wildly different. See, the drums and the electronic sounds in this tune sound to me a lot like Simulation Theory by Muse. What was that, 2018, I think, maybe? 2017? Can't remember. But I just felt like that album, it sounds a lot like that album. Just the way it's presented, like the way that the electronic drums sound. If Matt Bellamy started singing, I'd be like, yeah, that's how I felt, to be honest. There was a little bit of Double Ride homage. Die Hard A7X fans will know that the Double Ride thing was a big Jimmy the Rev Sullivan thing to do. He did it on Almost Easy, which is like one of the greatest tracks ever written, in my humble opinion. And I mean, even like if you look at all the Rev's greatest setups, like especially the Warped Tour, sorry, not the Warped Tour, the Taste the Chaos Tour drum kit, the one with the 3 bass drums, it's got 2 rides. Like that was a big integral part of like his setup going forward from the self-titled album. So it's kind of cool that they're doing it here, because it's definitely something that he would have done. Like if the Rev was still alive and drumming on this record, he definitely would have been doing some Double Ride stuff. You know what I mean? There was some heavy brass doing some like kind of like almost hip-hop inspired like riff. Loved that. Thought that was really, really heavy, really, really cool. It was like dun, 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 dun. I don't know, it just had a really cool vibe to it. But that could have been guitars. Like, I'd have happily had that be guitars. The fact that it was orchestral instruments was kind of cool, brass instruments was kind of cool, but it did feel a bit like, it just feels like there's loads of moments so far in the album where they could have just done this with Zack and Sinister Gates, Zacky Vengeance and Sinister Gates. I feel like they could have just done that, but they chose to do something else. And I know I saw an interview with M Shadows, where he was like, yeah, we zigged when people thought we were going to zag, and zag when people thought we were going to zig. And it does feel like that. And I think there's so much value in doing that, especially when you're an artist that's got such an established sound, as much of an established sound as Avenged Sevenfold has. But sometimes it can come across as you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. Like, I feel like there needs to be like a really good reason for it, or at least like an artistic reason beyond we just wanted to make something that people didn't think we'd make. You know, I don't know. I feel like as an artist you've got a voice, And I feel like their artistic voices are really strong and really great. I mean, just listen to the litany of albums they made before that were all incredible. And I just feel like they're trying something that's like, if you did this exact same music in 2005 and 2008, you've done it with guitars and maybe like a bit of orchestration, and it would have sounded as vibey, if not more. And yeah, same as the last song, same as Mattel. Nobody has this like minute and a half like ending, which is just quite navel gazy. I don't know. The whole album is 53 minutes, which I think is on the cusp of being too long. In my opinion, like albums, I mean, from a record point of view, albums were always like 45 minutes or less, right? Because each side is about 22 and a half minutes. So most albums back in the LP days, back in the record days, were less than 45 minutes long, unless they were a double LP, in which case they were like an hour and 20 minutes long. And I just definitely, me personally, as an album listening experience, love an album that is 45 minutes or less. I would take a solid, incredible, well put together 31-minute record over like a slightly puffed up 53-minute record, if I'm completely honest. Like, I think there's definitely times they could have shaved stuff off this and it would have been just as impactful, if not more. We Love You, just an interesting song name. So 30 seconds into We Love You, there's like this immediate vibe change, and it just did feel like quite stark. And I was kind of like trying to figure out, what's this trying to say? What's it trying to do? What's it trying to make me feel? There's a rising synth sound in this one, which I thought was really cool. And in fact, I'll talk about that in a second. But I thought that was kind of interesting. That sort of the falling one of the previous two tunes, there's now a rising one. But this song, to be completely honest, sounds like 3 or 4 songs in one. It feels like a camel. Like, it feels like a song that they just sort of coupled together from loads of different songs. Like, I feel like there could have been a better trajectory throughout the song. I think it's a great song, but I just think, like, that zag-zig thing, it feels like they were trying to zag, and it's like, you don't need to zag when people want you to zig. Sometimes you can just zig, and it sounds great, you know? I was glad to hear the country guitar at the end instead of the acoustic guitar of the opening, which is very classical sounding, which I feel like Brian Hayner, so Synesthegate's real name is Brian Hayner Jr., and I know Brian Hayner Sr. was quite a good country guitarist, I think, or like an acoustic guitarist, so I don't know, he must have had a big influence on this album. I definitely think this album showcases Synesthegates in a major way. Like, I know other albums have got like insane guitar solos that everyone still talks about, like the guitar solo on Afterlife, you know, like on the making of documentary, there's a bit where like the double bassist of the when they were orchestrating it, he like after one take he like goes, "That was a sick solo, man." He like praises the guitar solo because it's that good. But I think that in terms of Brian Hayner's, in Synesthegate's musicality, I think there's just so much on view here. Like, especially if you look at the track list, the personnel, he played so many different instruments on this thing. It's really amazing. Cosmic, I thought was great. I think this track is really, really good. It's got a really, really cool start. Then it's got this sort of gospel middle section, and then this orchestration starts to come in. This like huge, apparently they recorded with some big symphony orchestra. Can't remember which orchestra it was. Let me check. The San Bernardino Orchestra, symphony orchestra, very, very cool. Massive, huge orchestra, 75 piece I think I read, and that orchestration is just banging. It's so good. Now there's the rising synth again. So we've had the 2 songs of falling synths, now 2 songs of rising synths. Now the rising synth in the middle section of this song is really, really cool. I really loved listening to it, because as it's rising, it's out of tune with everything as it's rising, but then as they hit a chord on the beat, it hits that chord with it and then rises again. So it's like out of tune, out of tune, out of tune, together, out of tune, and it creates this really, really cool feel, actually. Like, I can't think of many things like it. I genuinely thought that was it really engaged me as a listener. Like, that's the thing about like a lot of albums. I want to be engaged as a listener. I don't want to. Like, that was one of the first times in the album where I was like, I feel like I can't be a passive listener listening to this. I feel like it really grabbed me in a great way. I kind of wish this song had been the single. And again, this song is maybe a little bit too long, but this song rocks. Post that build, there's some synths, very Postal Service, and then when it comes back in again, it's so satisfying and just feels so good. Again, it's not very Avenged Sevenfold, I have to say, like the amount of electronics that are happening and everything, but that's okay. I mean, I really, really like what I'm hearing, so even though it doesn't sound like Avenged Sevenfold, it still sounds amazing. Beautiful Morning is the next track, and that's got some really cool stuff. I mean, I love how the opening is in this sort of like 4/4 time, and then it does a metric modulation to like a faster tripleted time. Very, very cool. Really showcases Brooks Wackerman's like chops for sure. The chorus is great. I really like the vibe. I think there's some really beautiful moments in the song. There's like another chill gospel middle section. In fact, the middle section towards the end, it felt like a Beatles themed acid trip. And I know, I think I read somewhere that the guys that Sinister Gates and Matt Shadows have both been experimenting with like a lot of like psychedelic drugs or like like DMT and whatever. So I definitely feel like you can get a sense of that's where they're coming from. Again, another long ending. I honestly feel like this album is plagued with songs that go on too long. Like they don't just end when they should end. They just keep going. And like there's loads of songs from the back catalogue that are long and they go somewhere at the end, but it's always like kind of surprising where they go or gets really good. Like I think about like A Little Piece of Heaven, because it's been this kind of fun quirky thing, and then they go into this sort of like 3-bit when they go into hell or whatever and they get married and whatever. Great song. And then they come back again at the end. I don't know, it all wraps up nicely, whereas I feel like this song doesn't quite wrap up nicely. Now, Easier, we hear the auto-tune vocal, which I thought sounded great. I remember they did they had a whole thing when they did the self-titled album about how like they used auto-tune, and they were using it. They said, we're using the auto-tune for the sound, so that it sounds like autotune. You know, when you like listen to a T-Pain song, it's like that very specific sound. And I remember at the time people having a fit because they were like, "Oh, why are you autotuning the vocals? Like, you sing fine. Like, why are you doing this? It's cheating." And it's like, no. It's not cheating. It's a specific style. Like, isn't it cheating to have frets on a guitar? Why can't you just play it fretless and play it like accurately? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a different sound. It's a different style. That's the point. And I think this is taking that to the nth degree because it's very, very auto-tuned, very, very electronic sounding. Thought it sounded great though. Then the riff is quite an A7X riff actually. It's simple but effective. Like I remember seeing a clip of like Sinister Gates not wanting to play, was it the riff from Almost Easy? Because he's like, it's too simple, it's just like 2 notes. But it's like an amazing riff that we all love and like still listen to. The ending sort of goes on this sort of funky electronic trip. It's really, really not Avenged Sevenfold. As in, like, if you had given me, if you'd allowed me to make predictions in 2008 when I was listening to their self-titled record where it was going to go, not here. To be completely honest, it just wasn't here. I really like what it is, but it definitely just doesn't sound like Avenged Sevenfold. And is that a criticism or not? I think it's a critique. I don't think it's a criticism. I think a criticism is like, or like a review would be like, oh, I don't like that. But actually, I do like it. It's just interesting how different it is. It's like if you were listening to, I don't know, Duke Ellington and listening to some of his back catalogue. Like, let's say that you were listening to the album Such Sweet Thunder, and then out of nowhere, there just came like country, rockabilly, kind of bluegrassy bit. You'd be a bit like, what? Where did this come from? Like, it feels so out of the blue. It would be great because Duke Ellington was a genius, and Billy Strayhorn, his co-composer, but it just would be like, what is this? Like, you'd be confused, and I think moments like this in this album do leave me a bit confused. And I think the reason it still leaves me confused, because actually I like all those bits, it just feels like I wish they'd have picked one of those trajectories and made the whole album go down it instead of flitting between loads and loads and loads of different styles. I think this is an album I'm definitely going to listen to a lot more, because there's definitely things that are like I'm thinking about, and yeah, it's staying with me, which I think is a really, really good sign. Now, G, this track sounds like, oh yeah, we've listened to Dream Theater and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Porcupine Tree. Watch, look us do it. It felt like, yeah, like the very progressive side of Dream Theater. Like I'm thinking like the Dance of Eternity or whatever, or Emerson, Lake and Palmer's like trilogy album or something, like really intricate, weird, changing time signature, just like, yeah, really, really, really like heavily progressive. I'm here for it. Like I love that stuff. Again, not very Avenged Sevenfold, but I thought they play it so well. It was like such a convincing rendition of like progressive rock, progressive metal. I thought it was incredible to hear. But then it has this sort of like, what I'm kind of thinking is like an indie inspired chorus with like clean guitars and stuff, and a female vocalist. And I didn't get it. It was so progressive at the start and so wild and weird, and then it just has this sort of like normal, it was almost like normcore. It was almost like a meme or something. It was almost like, I don't know, it just felt like a complete foreign object placed into the song. Again, that foreign object was incredible and I really enjoyed listening to it. It felt in conflict with the opening and in conflict with the whole A7X sound in my head, but I don't know, are these good things or bad things? Like I genuinely think this is such an interesting album. I'm really taken aback by like how many choices they made, strong choices they made, and statements they made. Not many albums do this in my opinion, like especially not like metal albums. This is really, really cool. But weird, and I could get why people maybe wouldn't like it. But then I think also people have nostalgia ears on, because, and I do as well. Like I love the self-titled album, I love City of Evil, I love Waking the Fallen. Nightmare doesn't have as much of a nostalgic stranglehold on me. Hail to the King certainly doesn't, and The Stage definitely doesn't. But you know what I mean? Like I can't tell if it's it's because my taste changed or because I just have nostalgia glasses for that period from like 2002 to 2010 where it was just like they were riding high. I don't know. Now this song, Ordinary, with brackets around the O, it's interesting because then the next song is Death, parentheses around the D, and I know it spells out God, so G-O-D, and I know G, the lyrics are very much about like being God, I guess, but it felt to me like the O and the D, I couldn't, when I first saw it, I kind of thought the G stood alone and the O-D meant like overdose, because obviously that's how the Rev died, although I think he died of like a heart thing that was mixed with drugs and everything. That's how I read into it. I think they were going for God, but I don't know. So the synth opening, really cool again, goes into a funky direction. A lot of times the guys are doing this where they're going into this sort of funk-esque aesthetic, but it does kind of feel like Avenged Sevenfold are doing a cover. It feels like a cover of a different song, just with these cats doing it, because it's in such conflict with what I know to be the Avenged Sevenfold style, I guess. Now the ending gets real cool. It's so loud and big, and it's like, whoa, what am I listening to? What the fuck? Really, really, really cool. And then it goes into Death, which has this like Pink Floyd style to it. It feels like very spacey, and it almost turns into like a crooner song, honestly, with like the strings and the laid backness of it. Just beautiful. Some real orchestrational chops. Like the orchestration just sounds amazing, really, really beautiful. And then the final track, Life Is But a Dream, like it's just a piano track, but it's Sinister Gates playing it, and it's incredible. Like, it's really, really great playing. Like, beautiful, beautiful piano playing from Brian Hayner Jr. here. It sounded like Keith Emerson on the Trilogy album. It sounded like that kind of piano chops. Like, I was really, really taken aback. Like, genuinely, I thought it was stunning. I thought it was really, really stunning playing, and I thought that track was really, really cool. It was just really cool to hear. It just sounded so different, and it was just such an interesting way to end the album in a really cool way. Because if I had one thing I didn't like about the self-titled album, it was ending with Dear God, because it felt like that song was so different to all the rest of the songs, and it felt like it should have ended with A Little Piece of Heaven, and maybe they should have stuck Dear God up earlier. And Dear God, again, blessed with too long an outro, I think because they were going for that Eagles vibe. Felt like that could have been like just a single on its own and not part of the album, if I'm completely honest. It felt like this ending was like, hey, we've just taken you on a real weird trip. We've gone through some really different terrain, some really weird shit. Sit down, think about what you've heard, and let Sinister Gates play you out. Like, it felt like that, and I vibed. You know what? I vibed with this album. As someone who is admittedly a nostalgia glasses driven Avenged Sevenfold fan, I got a lot out of this album, and I hope I can see them live when they tour. I don't have a reviewing system. I kind of just wanted to talk about the album. I mean, you know, I loved Avenged Sevenfold so much. I loved the Rev so much. Like, I used to set my drum kit up like his drum kit. I'd always try and figure out how to set my drum kit up to look like his. I remember me and a band I used to be in called Cities That Sleep, we were like a post-hardcore band, pop punk-ish, and I remember setting up my drum kit like his with like the rack floor toms. So I had, this was like 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 rack toms, but the 14 and 16 raised off the ground, not like floor toms. That was very much like a Rev thing to do. Like, I can't think I've ever seen an image of the Rev using like a floor tom. It's always like hung, and I love that, and that was very inspired by him. So yeah, a lot of positive thoughts on this album, a lot of weird thoughts on this album. This album is weird, and if you are just someone who's like, I like the self-titled album Waking the Fallen, I don't know if you're going to love this album. And I don't know if I love this album. I need to listen to it again. It's definitely an album that's grabbed me and is making me want to listen to it again. I know Avenged Sevenfold went through this whole thing of like, I mean, it's been 7 years since they released another album. And also like they've gone through this whole weird thing about NFTs, and I think they're maybe like I don't know. These dudes must be in their 40s by now, and it's kind of like, do they have as much to offer in terms of like cultural relevance? I don't know. But I don't think that's here or there, really, because, like, well, I'm just trying to think of, like, other artists who survived over a long time and kept releasing music, and I think about people like Metallica and Genesis and Pink Floyd, and, like, you ask anyone, and, like, the modern stuff is just never as good as the old stuff. And is that because they weren't culturally relevant anymore? Is it because people were just nostalgic about the old stuff? What is it? I don't know. So, yeah, I hope I get to see them live. Maybe comment your thoughts below. I know there's probably going to be like 2 people watching this. Hello, mum. But, you know, comment down below what your favourite Avenged Sevenfold album is. And yeah, if you would like to give me a like and a follow and subscribe. That'd be really, really great. I'd be really, really appreciate it. I am actually a composer and a drummer, and if you want to go listen to some of my compositions, that'd be amazing. I'm just kind of starting doing videos like this just because I should be writing music, but instead I'm procrastinating by making Avenged Sevenfold content because I'm super relevant. Okay, have a good one, guys. Peace.